Welcome, hope you're doing well. My name is Nago Daniel, and this is the second episode of the series where we're discussing Taoism. Very exciting stuff. So, just as a quick recap, in the first episode, we talked about a lot of stuff. It was like 30 minutes long, but very exciting stuff. We talked about different kinds of human knowledge, human understanding. We talked about conventional knowledge, unconventional knowledge. Talked a lot about the things that we believe that are really out there, but in reality they are just social conventions. You know, the convention of language, the convention of roles, the illusion of the ego, we talked about that. We also mentioned the different kind of like modes of our minds, of our organism, you see. And we compared it to our central vision and our peripheral vision. Very exciting stuff. What else did we talk about? And we also talked about the limits of language, how language is inadequate when it comes to describing reality. And in this episode, we'll be talking about one of the central topics of Taoism, which is the Tao. What's up with that? I mean, you can find it everywhere. The first chapter is about the Tao. The book, it's in the title of the book. What is it all about? Now let's start off by asking the question, what is the Tao? Well, you see this Chinese character which stands for the Tao. It has several meanings. It can mean the way or the flow of things or the course of nature. So then Taoism is a philosophy of the way of nature. Now before we go on, I must make it clear here at the beginning, before we say anything about it, that when we ask the question, what is the Tao, no one can really answer it. Because you see, it cannot be defined. Yeah, we might find it strange that we're going to be talking about something that of which nothing can really be said. But you see, the first line of the Tao Te Ching, which is like one of the basic books to Taoism, the first chapter starts out by saying that the Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. And then it goes on to say, the name that can be spoken is not the eternal name. Or another translation is that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Basically the point is that it cannot be put into words. It cannot be defined. It cannot be described. You cannot understand it through words. So just remember this throughout the video, that all of this talking, all of this, I do think that it's valuable, but ultimately it cannot be put into words. And then imagine this, he writes this in the first line that the Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. And then he goes on to write a whole book about it. So isn't that interesting also? And just as a side note, like, look at how cool this book is. Like, I love this, like, nice illustrations on the side, you see. Very nice, very nice. I love these kind of drawings. Might change like the thumbnails of this series to some of these drawings. They look amazing. It's all hardcover. You know, I just like the way a book can look. So let's go on with the topic of the video. And by the way, we also mentioned this in the first episode, that reality just cannot be put into words, and the limitations of language. If you're interested more about that, you can check out the first episode. And now, even though it cannot be put into words, let's talk about it. You see, the Tao is that which is absolutely basic. The basic, whatever that there is, the basic energy of the universe, which is your true self, which is what you are, who you are. I mean, if the Tao is the basic energy of the universe, the basic whatever that there is, then you are it. You are that. You're not something separate from it. But you see, just in the same way that we can't bite our own teeth or look into our eyes without using a mirror or touch the tip of this finger with the tip of this finger, we cannot define ourselves. You see, it's almost like we're too close to define ourselves because we are the ones that are looking. You see, the one that is looking is trying to see who's looking, but you're the one that's looking. So then just in the same way that fire cannot burn itself, you cannot know yourself. You cannot make an object of who you are. And therefore, any kind of conception that you have of who you are is wrong. And as we said in the first episode, all the roles that you're playing, that's not you. And if you think of yourself as an ego, you know, this separate center of attention and action that is different from everything else, separate, and it's trapped in this bag of skin, and you're like, you know, the chauffeur of your body, that perception is false. You're not that. You're only pretending to be that. You know, you're only playing that you're that. Because you see, what you are escapes all definition. You cannot be, if we were to define you, first we have to start with defining your organism. And I think we can all agree that you are your body. You see, we first have to define this organism, your body. But you see, your organism it's completely inseparable from your environment. You cannot live without your environment, you see. It's just like when you're describing a man walking. When you're describing someone walking, first you have to describe him, walking, doing his leg, putting his legs, all sorts of stuff. But when you describe the organism walking, you only have a man just swinging his leg in empty air. So you also need to describe the environment that he is in. So just in the same way, when describing our body, we have to describe the environment that the body is in, that the organism is in. Because we act completely differently in different environments. Which means, of course, that we're not different from our environment, that we're inseparable from it. So to describe who you are, you would also have to describe the environment. And because everything is interconnected with everything else, you would have to describe the whole universe. And this is getting into the topic of the third episode, so I won't get really into this. The point is that you're not separate from the universe. You're not this cut off piece that's different from everything else. You're just as a part of everything that there is. Just like a apple is part of a tree, or the branches of a tree is part of the tree itself. And they're not different from it. So then, as we said, who you are escapes all definition. Because also, to define something, you need to classify. You need classification for thinking and for words. Is it this or that? But you see, if we take what we said as true, that to define you need to define the whole universe. And that you are the basic energy of the universe, whatever that there is, you're also that. Then who you are cannot be classified. You see, it cannot be put in a box and said that, it's black or white, it's long or short, or that it's temporal or eternal. You cannot put it into any box. Any category that you choose is inadequate. But you see, it's absolutely fundamental and it's basic to everything that there is. You see, the Tao, it's just like the color of your eyes. And I'm talking about the lens, not the retina or whatever that has the actual color in your eyes. It's just like that because you see, your lens has no color. It's transparent. You can see it if you look into a mirror. It's transparent. But yet, all the colors that you see depend on that lens being there. But the lens itself, it doesn't have any color. But it's fundamental. It's basic to every color that you see. You couldn't see it without them. You see, even if it had a color, we couldn't tell it. Because it's common to every color that we see. Everything we see, it's there. The lens is there. You see, it's like if when you were born, like the moment you first open your eyes, like colored sunglasses were put on your head, and for your whole life you would have that sunglass on your eyes, in front of your eyes, and you would see the world in some kind of filter. You wouldn't notice it. It would seem completely normal. It only seems to us right now that weird if we take on some kind of tinted sunglasses or whatever. It only seems weird. You only see the difference because we have something to contrast it to. Taking off the glasses. But as we have it with our lens, it's in every color that we see. We cannot isolate it. And you see also the same question is, what is the nature of consciousness? And you see, no one can really answer that. No one can give an answer to that because it's common to all experience. You can't tell me an experience, you see, when you're not conscious, when there is no consciousness. You're not aware of any kind of experience like that. And because we can't isolate it, nothing can really be really said about it. Because you see, to say something about something, you need to isolate it and have it separate from something else. Otherwise, you can't categorize it. Say that it's either this or that. So it's the same story that it's basic to everything that goes on, but we cannot put it into words. So maybe another word for the Tao is consciousness. Or maybe not, to be honest, because they probably use it in other contexts as a word, but it's a good way to think about it. Or you see, another one of these stories is all of the sounds that come out of your speaker. You see, all the sounds, you see, the stepping, the words that I'm saying to you, all of these are just some vibrations on some kind of device that's in your speaker. I think it's called a diaphragm or something like that. It's all just vibrations. But you see, it's not like, when I start a video, I tell you every sound that you will hear in this video is just vibrations. It's just the vibration of a diaphragm, and that's it. But all sounds that you hear is coming from that vibration. It's basic to everything, and it's taken for granted. So then similarly, the Tao is the basis for everything that goes on. It's taken for granted, and we like ignore it because it's common to all experience. Because you see, we don't notice anything for which we can't see a limit. That doesn't have some kind of boundary. We don't notice that. But it's very important to understand that you are it. And there's a way of experiencing that, well, as far as I've read about it and heard about it. There's a way of experiencing that where you become liberated. And you're no longer taken in by all the game of conventions or the game that you're playing, that you're a separate ego who came into this world and who will be swallowed by that, and that's that. That's over. Curtains forever. You see through that game, you see through that illusion, however convincing that might be. You see, to free yourself from these conventions and from these illusions, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean rejecting them. It just means that you're not deceived by them, and that you can use them instead of them using you. But how can we experience this? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. But as far as I've heard and read about it, it has something to do with, letting go of all the things that you're clinging on to, all the concepts that you have, or something like letting go of the need to control everything. Or I also read it that there's nothing that you can do. It's impossible. You see, the moment you're striving to get this experience and you try to change where you are right now, who you are, and the consciousness that you have right now, or whatever, however you want to say it, the moment you do that, you're already lost. And I read it somewhere that you are already liberated, that you already have it. You don't have to do anything. There's nothing to do. Well, these are all very interesting stuff. And I read that this is what you got to realize, that there's nothing to do. That you're already there. You're arrived already. There's nowhere to go. Well, of course, I'm still not sure about this, but it's all so interesting. So that if nothing can be said about this now, can it be really understood through words? Is there a point to us talking here? Except that it's interesting. Well, probably not. Probably it can be understood through words. It is said in these kind of stuff, Zen and the Taoism, that it can only be understood through direct experience. You see, as Zhuangzi, or however you spell his name, said, another Taoist writer, he said, if the language were adequate, it would only take a day to fully explain the Tao. But since it is not so, it only takes so long to explain the material existence. Tao is something beyond material existences. It cannot be conveyed either by words or by silence. But I do think that although it cannot be conveyed through words or by silence, as it said, it's still valuable to talk about it, I think. It's still valuable to discuss it, although it might lead to some confusion and some clinging on to some kind of concepts that you have about it. And it might lead to mistaking, the symbols that we have of reality with reality itself. But I do think that this experience can also be achieved through an intellectual way, something like that, discussing it. I'm not sure about it though. So then what does Lao Tzu say about this Tao? The author of this book, the Tao Te Ching. What does he say about it? Well, here are a couple of quotes from the Tao Te Ching. He says that there was something unclear before heaven and earth came into being. How calm, how empty. It stands alone, unchanging, everywhere it manifests itself tirelessly. It can be considered the source of everything in the universe. I don't know its name, but I call it the Tao. This one's from chapter 35, some other translations if you want to read it. And again, from Lao Tzu. The Tao is something unclear and indistinct. How unclear, how indistinct. And inside are images. How indistinct, how blurry. Now inside are things. How obscure, how confusing. And inside is the intellectual force. Because this force is true, inside there is confidence. And yet again, here are some other translations if you're interested. The main idea here in this quote seems to be that in the same way as to our eyes, our head seem like nothing. If I just move my hands along like this, they just disappear. There's just nothing there. They're just blank. But yet still, out of that nothingness I see. Out of that nothingness, all my intelligence comes. And just in the same way, the equally vague and seemingly empty and indefinable Tao is the intelligence that orders the world with a skill that is beyond our understanding. Just in the same way it's behind all of this, it seems like there's nothing, just in the same way that behind our eyes there's nothing, but yet still out of that we see. Now another way that we can refer to the Tao that I've seen on the internet, other people referring to it, as the interconnectedness of the yin and the yang. The playing of the opposites, the dance of the opposites. The hidden unity behind the opposites, behind black and white, up and down, inside, outside, something, nothing, life and death. The hidden unity behind them. Meaning that they are so inseparable from each other that they are in reality are one. Just like you can't have bees without flowers. And you see, because everything is interconnected with everything else, you can't have one without the other. This whole system of interconnectedness that is in the universe is the Tao. That's another way of referring to it that I've heard of. And we'll talk more about this interconnectedness, mutual arising, in the third episode. Now, I'd like to point out some very interesting differences between the Tao and the common idea of God that most people have in their mind. And I'm not talking about the God of the theologians or this more profound sense of God, the common idea of the boss. The main difference between these is that while God puts together the world by doing, and it creates by doing, Tao does it by not non-doing, or more better put, by growing or by becoming. The way God does it is that things are put together piece by piece, you see. Just like how an engineer would put together a machine, or how a sculptor would sculpt a statue, or however you say that. You see, it's going from the outside to the inside, putting it together piece by piece, so then things become separate things. While the other way of looking at it is that the things that grow, they like divide themselves, and they grow from within. They go from the inside to the outside. You can imagine how a flower grows or a tree grows. And since in the natural world you don't usually see this style of putting things together, to the Chinese mind it would seem unusual and strange to ask, how was I made? See, this is the question with which a lot of children are bugging their children. A lot of children are bugging their parents. They go and ask their parents, how was I made? Or who would have I been if I had different parents, or something like that? I mean, how do you answer those questions? Now, of course, if the universe would be made and put together, there would be, of course, someone who knew how it was put together and who could explain it in words, like a mechanic could explain how he put together a machine. But in a universe that grows in its entirety, all of it grows, it's impossible to have this. It's impossible to have someone that can explain how it grows. Someone that can explain it in words and thoughts and put it into the rudimentary system of thoughts and language. So that a Taoist doesn't even think about asking the question, does the Tao know? How does it make stuff? How does it create the universe? Because the Tao, the principle of the Tao is spontaneity. It doesn't have a plan. As Lao Tzu said, the principle of Tao is spontaneity. But you see, when talking about spontaneity, it's not like some blind energy, some random forces, some disordered energies that are just going along and doing stuff. You see, we have this kind of idea of the universe that behind it is there's just this blind energy, and it's stupid, this stupid material. And that is just a mere chance that intelligence somehow just arise by mere chance on this planet, some random chemicals came together and boom, we have consciousness and intelligence. This idea also shows in Freud's idea of the libido, which controls our behavior, which means blind, lost, bodied energy. But you see, this is not the idea of spontaneity, and also an intelligent organism cannot arise out of an unintelligent environment. I mean, that just seems logical to me. But you see, the problem with our conventional language is that it cannot explain something that does not go according to a plan. It cannot explain spontaneity that doesn't have a plan, that doesn't go, Thought by thought, ordered one after another, thought after thought after thought after thought. It cannot explain something other than that, something spontaneous without a plan. But you see, this spontaneity, this intelligence, you're doing it right now. You are also doing it. Of course you are. I mean, your body functions and is organized without your knowledge. You don't know how you do it, but still you do it. You don't know how you pump your blood, grow your brain, or secrete your hormones and all of that. You don't know how you do that. But you can't explain it, but you do it. You know it because you do it. So then, just in the same way, we don't know how we move our muscles. The Tao doesn't know how it makes the universe. To quote Zhuangzi, or Zhuangzi, however you spell his name, things are born around us, but no one knows where they come from. They come out, but no one sees the gate. People, one and all, cherish the part of knowledge that is known. They do not know how to use the unknown to attain knowledge. Isn't this thoughtlessness? Now, another difference between the common idea of God that most people have and the Tao is the way they relate to creation, to their creation. Now, God, of course, He's the boss, He's the ruler. He's above everything else, and He made everything else. Now, the Taoist has a different view. To quote Lao Tzu, the great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. All things depend upon it to exist, and it does not abandon them. To its accomplishments, it lays no claim. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. So here's the difference. To its accomplishments, it lays no claim, and the other thing, it does not lord it over them. You see, when it does something, when merits are accomplished, it doesn't take the credit and say, I've done it and now bow before me. The Tao is more like water. It hides. It always goes away. It hides in the lowest place, just like how water flows to the lowest place. Now, another one is that while God knows Himself and He's completely transparent to Himself, the Tao is completely immersed in mystery and darkness. The kind of darkness that our mind faces when trying to remember back to our earliest memories and what happened before we were born. Now, a criticism towards the Tao is that its vision towards the Absolute is kind of like mysterious, and that it seems mystical and confusing. All of this seems mystical and confusing. Well, here's what Lao Tzu says about this. When the superior man hears about the Tao, he does his best to practice it. When the mediocre man hears about the Tao, sometimes he keeps it, sometimes he loses it. When the inferior man hears about the Tao, he will laugh out loud. If he did not laugh, the Tao would not be Tao. Now, I don't really understand what it's all about, so I'll read a quote that explains this from this book by Alan Watts. For it really is impossible to appreciate what is meant by the Tao without becoming, in some sense, stupid, as long as the conscious mind frenetically tries to contain the world in its net of abstractions and insist that life be restricted and circumscribed into its rigid categories. The state of Taoism will remain incomprehensible and the mind itself will wear out. The Tao is accessible only to minds that can practice the simple and subtle art of Wu Wei, which, after Tao, is the second most important principle of Taoism. And we'll talk about this in the fourth episode of the series, this principle of Wu Wei, of not forcing, going along, rolling with the punch, all sorts of ways. We also say this. In the next episode, we'll talk about another principle of Taoism that we mentioned already a bunch of times in this video, the idea of mutual arising, basically that you can't have something without nothing. So then this is the Tao, of which nothing can be really said. Whole interconnectedness of everything changing. You see, change is life, and this is the Tao. Now, I hope that you liked this video. I hope you found it interesting and maybe you learned something new about all of this stuff. And there will be a link in the description to the next episode if it's out, and you'll find it in the playlist. So thank you for watching, thank you for being here. See you in the next episode, and goodbye.